Okay, I am always loving to talk to new people around the world about how we can improve the aging process. I know personally I'm on a mission to improve how I age at midlife. So I'm in my prime when I'm 70, 80 years old, retired and exploring the world. So if you're on that same mission, a similar journey that I want to see happen in my world, I've got some great topics for you today. So thank you, Hannah, for coming on the podcast and sharing what you're working on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I always also want to thank your audience for taking the time to be here at the podcast and listen to what we have to say.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you, what you're working on, and your purpose, your why.
So, I live in South Africa, and just in case you wonder what my accent is, I come from the Netherlands originally, but have been living in Southern Africa for 40 years now. And my purpose is about educating people on the importance of letting go of grudges, doing the forgiveness work. And then it is so beneficial for the aging process because holding a grudge, I don't know which famous person said it, but it's like drinking, trying to kill somebody while drinking the poison yourself. And we can have big grudges and small ones, but they're all poisonous.
Hmm. Why do you feel that this is important? How do you get into it?
Well, how I got into it is that I had a situation in my life where I had to forgive, not the easiest situation.
Hmm.
And I was at that time very fortunate that I knew already beforehand about the importance of forgiveness. So I could forgive already then and say to myself and others about this tragedy that I was going to take this situation and turn it, yeah, to become better from it instead of bitter. Then I looked around at the people around me who did not want to forgive, and I could see how they struggled with their health.
Hmm.
So, and I also used that tragedy as a turning point to really start doing what I wanted to do, and I got into the coaching, but that's already over 30 years ago.
Wow. It seems to be an area that I was interested in this topic because it seems to have a lot of connection to people struggling with health issues. They don't know why. And speaking to hormone imbalances, that not forgiving or not letting go, or even not being aware that they have childhood, early in life trauma, and things that they're holding these grudges, that contributes to your beaker of stress and other sources of chronic stress that you're not even aware about, I would think.
Absolutely. And people ask me also often, well, why have you linked forgiveness to the hormones? Why hormones? Why not any of the other diseases? Well, the thing is that we have meridians that run through our body. You're familiar with them. There's the acupuncturist loves sticking needles in them to get the energy flowing again,
Mhm.
which is very beneficial for our health. And we have 14 major meridians, and 12 of them are linked to organs. And one of them is linked to the pericardium, and it's also called the circulation 6 hormone. Now, our meridian flow is affected by our thinking. Each meridian has a thought process that will inhibit the flow of that meridian. So if we're very fearful, our kidney meridian will get it. If we're angry, our stomach meridian will get it. And if we hold grudges, that affects our circulation sex hormone meridian, and then it throws out that hormonal system. And the antidote for that is forgiveness. And I've seen it with my clients as well, those with hormonal imbalances and, some more severe than others. Some can have severe pain right through the month from the menstruation to ovulation and round in circles. And doing the forgiveness work just clears so much up. But it will affect all illnesses, because if you don't address the grudges while they're still relatively small and maybe throw your hormones out, you have a big chance it will lead to bigger issues further down the line.
How did you come across this type of work?
Well, I was very fortunate. I'm not trained as a regular coach. I'm trained in three major modalities. One is I'm a kinesiologist, an educational kinesiologist. So there I was already introduced to the meridians and the thought processes that go with it. And then later I qualified as an allergy practitioner where we assist people to come into balance with allergens so that you can reintroduce those things that you're allergic for and not have to avoid them for the rest of your life. I love that thought pattern. I'm not good at avoiding anything. And then the last thing is I'm the medical intuitive, again, linking unresolved trauma and emotions and stuck beliefs and how they affect our health. And while I was living in this rural village in Lesotho, I had a visitor from the States teaching me the educational kinesiology. So I was very fortunate that I learned it already a long time ago. And as I said, after my tragedy, I decided, no, this is what I want to do. We were talking already back then of why make a living if you can make a life. And so after the tragedy, it was like, stop making a living, let's make a life, and then earn money in the process for the living.
When you speak to the word kinesiology, sounds different than kinesiology in exercise science world. We're looking at what muscles are used in movement patterns. So if I'm doing a squat, let's identify concentric versus eccentric and all that. What kind of kinesiology are you speaking towards?
Yes, you're right, it is different, but there's a link. So with the kinesiology one, there are quite a few different kinesiology forms around. You've got specialized kinesiology, educational kinesiology, you've got the touch for health. And what we all have in common is that we use something called muscle testing. So
Mhm.
you can stick out your arm and then ask a question, and but it must be a yes no question, and depending on if the arm stays up or goes down, you can have a yes no answer. Some of the kinesiology ones, especially the touch for health ones, go also deeper into the muscles and switching muscles on and off, not just through exercise, but with acupressure points and releasing certain thought patterns that are linked to the different muscle groups, because each muscle is also linked to a meridian.
And the meridian that's connecting the muscle to the brain, basically, is that the meridian of the function of the feelings, the emotions with that muscle?
That is now a good question. I don't know. The brain comes somewhere along in play. I cannot exactly answer how that works, but I do know, for example, that if we have a lot of fearful thoughts, it inhibits the kidney meridian and it'll like will start pulling up these muscles, which are also linked to the kidney meridian. Now, when you stimulate these points here on your chest, just below the collarbone, and a hand on your navel, now you are stimulate. This is the end point of the kidney meridian, the K27 to be exact, for those who are interested in that. When you massage those points, then people find, hey, my neck muscles start to relax because you can affect the thinking through the body. And so it's a loop, the body affects the thinking and the thinking affects the body. So sometimes you can also change the way we think and feel by working on the body.
It's interesting. I haven't realized this. It's been 5 years since 2020 happened. So it kind of left the functional nutritional therapy practitioner work that we did on hold. I haven't returned to it because I moved, and working remote, you don't get to do this hands-on testing that we do in nutritional therapy that I remember like pressing here. That was what is that, gallbladder or something. There's different muscle connections to release those emotions or connect to organ functions. So I assume that maybe is connected to the meridians that where they end. If you have a migraine, you touch different points. Sometimes that they're connected to that.
Absolutely. And it is much harder to do those things online. But the thing is, if a gallbladder meridian is out of balance, then I'm just thinking now which one. I now don't no. Let's just look at the liver because I know that one better off by heart. That is all about transformation and the welcoming change in your life. Oh yeah, gallbladder is about choice making. So if you struggle with choice making, the gallbladder will give you trouble, can give you trouble. And then when you address that choice making issue that you might have, struggling to make choices with ease and holding on, to old things for dear life, then when you change that thinking pattern, the energy starts flowing, the muscles linked to that gallbladder will improve, and the gallbladder can improve. So it's all connected.
So this is interesting. I just had this conversation with a friend last night, and they were telling me a story of someone that is struggling finding themselves, having who they are, what their identity is, and what their purpose is in life. And they're having a lot of instability in their blood sugar, perhaps, what they're eating and their choices they make, and lack of motivation. But it'd be interesting to hear your perspective if you are struggling with depression and who you are and what you want to do in life and finding motivation. How is that connected to the organ function that might be the pancreas, or to me it's the gut brain connection creating the neurotransmitter deficiency and firing the amygdala? I don't know. So it was what's going on in there that's connected together to have someone feel that lack of luster and striving to thrive motivation type of feelings.
Now we can ask ourselves what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it because, and as I said earlier, they are definitely affect each other, but does it come from I'm feeling so down because I'm eating wrong and too much sugar, which throws out the whole digestive system, and then I get depressed? Or is it because I have certain thinking patterns, because I have unresolved trauma, and maybe something happened when I was young? And most people have this, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
that somewhere we feel like there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I am not lovable. And when we start addressing those issues, then, and because the desire for sugar is bringing sweetness into our life. And when you learn to love yourself as you are, the sweetness is coming back. And then the urge for external sweetness will go down.
I love that. And another correlation, actually, yesterday as well, I was studying mitochondria and a new functional lab test called Me Screen, and the relationship to cell danger response theory of mitochondria going on hold. And it's not just toxic exposure, mold, chronic stress, over exercising, but it was also trauma, and how trauma is connected to cell danger response, and that slows down your mitochondria. Everything's on hold and keeping your energy production in reserve. So it'd be interesting your perspective in your world, how that childhood trauma or some type of trauma anywhere in life impacts our energy production with regards to mitochondria function.
I am totally agreeing with you, because when we have a trauma and we have these emotions that flow, flood the body, those emotions are going through the body in the form of neuropeptides. And those neuropeptides will hook into a receptor on the cell membrane and then trigger a stress response the in the cells. And they can get stuck there for a long time, especially if we don't resolve, release that trauma if we don't deal with it. And I'm not 100% sure how it affects the mitochondria. And I'm very glad to hear that about what you just said. And it makes sense. We're now preserving our energy because we don't know when we really need it. But I do know that the stress response, that if that's triggered in the cell, it shortens the lifespan of cells. And it's very important to deal with those traumas, definitely.
Mhm. Hmm. Yes. So, with your focus of your work, how does this have to do with men and women in middle age to improve their aging process? And you're speaking, mentioned hormone balance.
Well, as I mentioned to you, as we were talking about just now, if we're holding on to grudges, so there's so many things that are happening at play here. But if we're holding on to a grudge, our cells are not functioning properly. That will speed up the aging process, just to be, that is clear. Then, if our hormonal system is out of balance, as women, we could have more PMS, which means that other people around us will have to walk on eggshells around us because that it is that time of the month. And if we don't deal with it during PMS, then who knows, menopause could be one long PMS. So it is really important to deal with those issues while they're still relatively small. The other thing that is going to happen is that when something happens to me today, our brain is wired in such a way that we link it back to the past because we're constantly searching for danger. And so if I have unresolved trauma sitting there, I will very likely misinterpret many things as dangerous. As I said earlier, maybe I believe I'm unlovable, then
Mhm.
you might just look in at me in a certain way just because you got something in your eye, but I will interpret it like, see, she doesn't like me. Look, she's rolling her eyes. But in the meantime, you maybe have something stuck in your eye. That is extremely stressful if I constantly interpret my environment as dangerous.
Mm.
And that is very likely to happen if I have those unresolved traumas.
So you're saying that the seeing everything as danger in our environment, the words people say, has to do with our programming of our negative thoughts and negative beliefs, and that could be a result of trauma early on.
Yes, I'm definitely saying that. Now, the one thing I also want to add to that is I don't want people to say, well, you have to now treat me in a certain way because I had this trauma. No, that is a load of rubbish, to say it politely. It is about overcoming and releasing the trauma. It is about getting better from it. How often do we
Mhm.
hear, our mess becomes our message? Like in my case, my trauma became my message on
Your purpose.
realizing how important, yeah, it becomes your purpose. So don't use trauma as an excuse, well, I can't do this because I was abandoned or whatever
Mm-hmm.
happened. Yeah, that's
Well,
very important.
I think that's a lot of what relates to what I keep talking about, similar but different, that people assume I'm getting older, these things are going to happen. So I'm just going to accept it as my new normal. So fill in the blank, whatever that might be. But it seems to be it's the choices we are making based on what I'm told is going to happen to my future self or as I enter the second half of my life, this is what's going to happen to me. And so I'm having the belief structure, oh, my skin is going to get saggy and wrinkly, and I'm going to gain weight, and I'm going to be depressed and have bloated belly, whatever it is, just you hear all this stuff. So it's almost we're programming our brain to go, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm just going to say that's a part of aging, blame it. Instead of my thinking is, let's figure out why things are happening and take a different approach and figure out solutions based on what changes as we age and perhaps part of it for some people might be starting with foundationally our way of thinking.
Absolutely. Now, if you think of it, we have a certain amount of life force going through our meridians. And I don't think there's any reason why that life force would diminish other than us squeezing those meridians closed because we have unresolved stuff. Conflicts can be, as I said, big and small. And so
Mhm.
we are squeezing the life force out of ourselves with our unresolved and unforgiveness that is going on. And that unforgiveness can be also going on now, with the politics. And I mean, country has troubles, our country has troubles, every country has troubles somewhere. And we can decide, you know what, let me learn from this. Let me find a way to get better from this instead of getting worse. And that way, first of all, we start focusing on love and growth, taking our mind off the expectation, oh, well, growing old is not for sissies. I'm going to struggle. I'm going to fall apart. Of course, you're going to fall apart, but you want to fall apart as you fall into the grave. Somebody has
Mhm.
to, it doesn't have to be horrible. Okay, let me
Mhm.
give you one good example. Women after menopause, but also men, the big problem is osteoporosis. Now, when I was doing my research on menopause and some of the symptoms that women go through, and I was identifying with that the underlying issues, the emotional issues linked to that, my husband was saying, but I went through that. I go through that. For example, if we look at the bones, it's about support, but also feeling valuable.
Mhm.
So in that midlife phase, we start questioning ourselves, am I still relevant? Do I still matter? Now,
Mhm.
if you don't think you matter and you think you're over the hill, and because you don't, you're going to have some wrinkles, but because you feel you're not relevant anymore, then your body start actually eating itself up from the
Mhm.
inside out.
How's that?
And how's that, you say? Or,
How does that
well,
work?
you
How does your
start,
body eat it?
well, it will start decalcifying your bones. So the thinking pattern of I'm not relevant will get the body to start absorbing or decalcifying the bones. Now, why am I saying that? Is that there's two reasons. First of all, I'm studying something called Germanic healing knowledge. It's very interesting where they look at the psychic roots of illnesses. And that's one of the things they said. But the other thing that I learned is that in the East, especially when they haven't westernized so much yet, women don't seem to suffer so much from osteoporosis. Why not? It's because they have a function in society. They are the wise women, they are the ones, and the wise men, they are relevant still in their society. And then they found osteoporosis was not such a problem. But as they westernize more, it becomes more of a problem.
Hmm. What about you're speaking to men as well as women? We go through menopause for men and menopause for women. What are some signs and symptoms that would help people see how they can connect the dots and correlate? Well, this might be because of previous experiences in life.
Well, if you look at that phase, menopause or menopause, it's the time where we reevaluate our life. It's like midpoint. In the old
Mhm.
days was maybe two-thirds or less or more than that. But then we start thinking, am I happy with the life that I've created up till now?
Mhm.
Do I want to continue in this path? Um, and so how will you know that you're in this phase is when you become restless and irritable, like, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. I mean, the divorce rate is extremely high in that phase in our lives. I definitely tried to get rid of my husband at that phase, but I was fortunate enough that he was like chewing gum stuck under my shoe and I couldn't get rid of him. And I'm now very grateful that he was so adamant not to let me go. I'm very happy that we are still living together. But if you find that restlessness, so that is a good indication.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that's when you want to start thinking of, maybe I must get spouse number 2.0 or 3.0 or how many far you are. Then hot flushes, definitely an indication. And men do have hot flushes. I know my husband had hot flushes. Then I'm just thinking now, heart palpitations, this thing of, am I still lovable? Especially men, but women also in a way. They start to start flirting with younger guys and younger women to see if they actually still attractive. But it's just our insecurities.
Hmm.
Or you want to radically change your career because you realize, wasn't what I wanted.
My gosh. Yeah. This is so weird. This is the whole conversation I had with a friend last night. It's like, but wow, how many people I know that are going through midlife with their spouses, partners, and just struggling with their own self-identity, feeling invaluable and having these insecurities, and people not putting the dots together when we look at the whole picture, zoom out before you zoom in, that this is maybe where you need to focus on is you, which I always say put the oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. And actually was just on a flight to British Airways to Italy, to both ways. I recorded that little video snip and put on my YouTube channel, and it had so many views. I thought, okay, do people understand what that means? You need to put the oxygen mask on first, and why it was such a popular little video clip. But I feel that people middle age start to push pause, go, yeah, where do I want to be? Is this the right path I'm taking? And figure out, maybe I need to stop, pause, and reflect on who I am and who do I want to be. I feel like I'm in a second part of my life, and I have redesigned my whole life last few years and starting a new project. And that sometimes I just think you might need to do that, is just stop, pause, and reflect on who you are and who do you want to be, because you can change that.
Yeah. And you know what is the thing is, the danger a lot of people make, or the mistake people can make, is that they focus outside and say, I need to change my outside. But I like to live with the principle that my outside is a reflection of my inside.
Yeah.
So my irritating partner gives me tremendous feedback on where I can change. So if I have a partner that is not valuing me, or if client comes to me and says, "Oh, no, no, my husband doesn't value me or my wife doesn't value me," and I say, "Well, how often do you put yourself last? How often
Mhm.
do you voice your needs?" "Oh, no, I'm always everybody else first." I said, "Well, how can you expect them to take you into consideration if you don't even take yourself into
Mhm.
consideration?" So, where does the answer lie now? Instead of getting all angry and upset and expecting other people to, take our needs into consideration, we can start looking at ourselves. How can I look after my needs? And it doesn't have to cost much money or time. It can be, taking some time to be quiet, doing some exercise. You don't even have to have a gym membership for just being kind to yourself. Start listening how we speak to ourselves. We are so rude and so harsh with ourselves, and then we get upset if our partner is upset, harsh with us.
Yeah,
So that partner, those irritating people, give us gold to guide us how to change.
because it's not, we're thinking it's them, but it's really ourselves that need to change sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, if I look in the mirror, I have this video of a rooster that I used to have, and he's fighting with his mirror image and going absolutely nuts, flapping his wings and attacking this reflection until he realized, oh, There's nothing there. And he stops. If we don't like the reflection, it works for me to live life like that.
Mm.
If I don't like what I see, I change myself. The people around us start treating us differently. Our
Mhm.
experience is different. We start to filter the information that's coming in differently too.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, nobody looks after me, nobody cares about me, then they can
Yeah.
see, oh, actually, they do care. I just never noticed it before.
Yes. And I think that's part of, we hear the C's in life. You have choices. I was just going to look it up, the three C's in life: choices, chances, and changes. That every day you are faced with decisions, the choices you make shape your reality and your future. Chances, taking risks is essential to growth. Without stepping out of your comfort zone, you may miss valuable opportunities. And the third one is changes, growth and transformation require change. Embracing change rather than resisting it helps you evolve your best self. So the saying is you must make a choice to take a chance or your life will never change.
And I love that you brought that up about choices because I also, with my clients, we talk about that. And we think, oh, it has to be, say now I'm want to lose weight,
Hmm.
and there's apple and there's a chocolate. And then I'm going like, well, I have to choose that apple because the chocolate is bad for me. And what is everybody else around me going to say if I now eat a chocolate and it's know I'm overweight and da 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 da. So there's this whole inner chatter going on. And I can now choose that apple because I feel I have to, or I'm worried about what other people say. On the other hand, I can also look at the apple and instead of the chocolate and say, you know what? I love apples and I know I feel good after eating an apple. So I'm choosing the apple. Now I'm choosing out of love instead of fear because it's our motive behind the fear, behind the choice. That is the seed that we're sowing. That is that element that matters. So if I make a choice based on fear, I'm going to get the fruits of fear: separation, breaking down, death, destruction, but doesn't have to be physical death. But and if I make the choices based on love, I get growth and opportunity and happiness. And last thing I will say on this, how do you know a choice is based on love or fear? Any idea?
What you tell me?
A choice based on fear always looks safe, and a choice based on love always looks risky. But not like risky, like, shall I run in front of a train and see if I can survive? That's just stupidity. But risky, your reputation is on the line, or you have to take a bit of a risk financially. Not a major risk, just small little risks.
Mm-hmm.
But a choice based on love is more risky than the choices based on fear. At least they look more
Interesting.
risky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, did I read what you put in the intake form? I want to just give the little paragraph. I think it's interesting to start conversation of solutions.
Okay. So what are you asking me what the solutions
No,
are?
no, well, I just want to read this. So,
Okay.
you mentioned in the intake form in my podcast that we just summarize what we said. We ask ourselves midlife, am I still relevant? Am I still desirable? Do I like what I've done with the first half of my life? And if not, then what? And then you spoke to, and I'm just summarizing what we've already discussed too, but women's hormonal issues are often linked to their imbalance between masculinity and femininity. Men might not deal directly with menstruation, but creating this inner balance relates to them as well. It is creating balance between active and resting, or between thinking and intuition. And then lastly, you mentioned holding grudges is poisonous to everybody. And we can go into solutions, if we could, on the importance of forgiveness and how to let go of those grudges and how do we free up that internal chaos, I would think, that we want to replace with positive energy so we can repair, restore, and help continue pursuing goals for our future self.
Right. So, is there a particular part that you want me to talk about? Because there was a lot of things you said there.
That's it. Everything we just talked about is kind of what I felt. That was a summary of what you said in my notes. But my point is solutions. What do we do? You're saying all this information on our grudges and giving forgiveness, but how do we do that to restore our health? What are some action items you can share with people?
Well, what I do for forgiveness is if you are aware of a situation where you know you're holding a grudge, then you can take time to analyze, well, what is the good that has come out of this? Like in my traumatic event, I could look at it and say, you know what, I can now do what I love to do. And I'm now free to move. There were a whole lot of things. That makes forgiveness already easier because that difficult situation empowered me, enabled me to do what I really wanted to do. So that is one example of forgiveness. Another thing of forgiveness is like what I just said about the mirror. When I am now irritated with my husband because he was, say, rude to me, I realize now, oh, I have been so rude to me. Let me change me. That is going to improve the quality of my life. And now I can forgive him because he just showed me a valuable point. So it's easy to forgive him. And then I need to forgive myself also for having been so rude to me. So those are just some examples of how you can incorporate forgiveness in your
Mhm.
journey.
How
And
can we improve our thinking, our thoughts, positive thoughts?
well, I have created an app, a web app, iThrive, it's called. And it's a web app, so it runs off a website, iThrive.zone. And when people can sign up for that, they can sign up for free for 35 days. And then there are programs, specific topics, including menopause and menopause and menopause, I called it, but I'll turn it into menopause, or carefree periods, but there's also things of getting unstuck. There are quite a range of subjects that everybody can find something.
Mhm.
And actually, if they go to hannakok.com, they can sign up for free for 35 days, no credit card needed. So that is something they can do. They
Mhm.
can start changing it. And the good thing is, they're audio programs, no active listening is required. So you can just put it on out loud or softly in the background, and it will start doing its magic.
That's great. I think it's giving people solutions, give them options, figure out, all right, I understand what you're saying. This resonates with me. I feel this is an area of opportunity that I have not focused on or dove deep into that maybe if you are that person that is struggling getting results from everything you are doing with nutrition, exercise, supplements, lifestyle habits, your sleep and your stress management, perhaps you need to go a little bit deeper, is what I hear you're saying, Hannah, that people might need to start with internally, not gut health, but their way of thinking.
Absolutely. And you know, a lot of people feel so bad that they've done all the hard work, like you said, lifestyle changes, dietary changes, whatever, and it's not working.
Mhm.
And it's not because you didn't try hard enough, but it is because it is so important to let go of the way you of the trauma, letting go of the fear-based thinking that you have that are keeping you stuck, and then causing
Mhm.
that aging process that we spoke about right in the beginning. And
Mhm.
when people sign up for that free gift, in there is also a forgiveness little course with some videos in there, so they will have access to that as well.
It's Have you come across people connecting to any exercise addictions, drug, alcohol? Just they're not dealing with their emotions and having those sense of insecurities, and it might be connected to something deeper. As in the endurance race world, I've done many episodes in the past 12 years. We've had this podcast on why people choose to race. I used to be in the Ironman world and people always signing up, they're always doing some race. And I always was curious of that individual. What are you running to, or what are you running from? What are you avoiding, and filling that in with over exercise training, or it's the person's that's gambling, or they're drinking every night heavily. There's all those different addicted, those vices, but I always felt that there's something you're avoiding, that you don't want to deal with those emotions.
I totally agree with you. And in my iThrive app, there is actually also the topic overcome addictions that have helped people to overcome some of it. But if you are addicted to something, you will need some help as well to identify the trauma and to release it. That is, if you don't do that, you just will replace one addiction with another.
Exactly. That's what I learned from clients I used to have that were past history of drugs, then they're alcohol, they gamble heavily, and then they got into triathlons. Like, wait, I'm starting to see this pattern. What's going on deep below that you're not facing? You're not dealing with those emotions.
Absolutely. And I actually had a client. She was a lady, was in a safe house, and had she had relapsed 3 times from drug addiction. She constantly had people from her old life contacting her. She was in prostitution at the time, to be able to afford the drug habit. And then she started using my iThrives.
Mhm.
And it was for the first time she said, I know I'm not going to fall back again. And she hasn't. So it is a mindset thing.
Yeah.
It really is so important to
How
change
do you
that.
find people get in the right state? How do we get them to feel that they need help, that to understand that they have insecurities, that they have fear? How do you get them to move them, nudge them a little bit to get them to discover? Because it has to be your own choice.
Sure. Now, what I say to people, how do you know you need some assistance, some guidance? Well, the fact that you're still above ground, you're not dead yet, means you probably can use it. And people think that if I get help, there must be something wrong with me. And that is not true. Because in sports world, how do you get to the top? By getting a coach. Doesn't mean that they are useless. Absolutely not. They have the drive to improve and they realize I don't see my blind spots. I don't know everything. Let me bring an expert in that can help me with that.
Mhm.
And so if you are not smiling every day, and I doubt that everybody is smiling every day, we don't have wings coming from our hanging from our shoulders, then we probably could benefit from getting some help. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Just
Mhm.
welcome to the crowd of messy, imperfect people.
Mhm.
Join
Yeah,
the tribe.
exactly. So, where can people learn more about your iThrive and your services and coaching?
The best is for people to go to hannakok.com. Now, I know English people cannot help themselves and they have to put a H behind the Hannah. So I've got two domains, Hannah with the H and Hannah without the H. And then my surname Kok is Kok. So hannakok.com, you'll go to land on my landing page, sign up for the iThrives, and then you will automatically be informed of coaching opportunities, but you also will get informative newsletters that can just guide you to move forward, even if you
Yeah.
never use my coaching.
That's great. Well, I appreciate what you are doing and taking a different approach to help people thrive as they age and not blame the aging process and their hormone imbalance. And it's really taken a step and step back, pause, and reflect on your internal wiring and getting that positive mindset. And so you can have growth and feel your best and live your best life when you're older.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And thanks again, Debbie, for this wonderful opportunity for be on your podcast. I really have appreciated it.
Well, it's a good topic and we need to get that out there more. So anything I can do, let me know.